So the question was, if an individual that is on unemployment is offered their job back and they refuse to come back, does that affect their unemployment? And the answer is yes. One of the big differences between this current situation with the pandemic versus a recession is many of the individuals that have applied for unemployment and are receiving unemployment are job attached, meaning the employer has lost economic activity or has had to quarantine, but hopes, as some of the restrictions are lifted, that economic activity will return and they will be able to contact these employees and bring them back to work for them. If an employee decides that they want to stay on unemployment and they have been offered a job, the same job that they left, that is now considered a quit and will end their unemployment benefit. Unemployment benefit the CARES Act has added a $600 stimulus to try and help provide more economic relief to those that are unemployed. But it is not intended to be a permanent program. It is a temporary program until employment returns. So if that employment is offered, it is a quit, and that person would be ineligible. The employers have the ability to be able to contact us. We have an employer line, and they can also fax tips in to 801-526-4402. So that's an employer fax line to be able to report to us that, hey, I offered to these individuals and they did turn down the offer. Now, it is very important that the employer offers them the same job that they left, or at least the same wages. If an employer reaches out and says, hey, I've cut your pay by a significant amount, then it's not always going to be a quit, because we have to look at was it suitable work that was offered, and if there is a significant pay cut, that could create issue that will need to be resolved on a case-by-case scenario. But if they offered the same job, the same pay, it will turn into a quit, and that person becomes ineligible for unemployment.
What does unemployment look like when you have in more white-collar fields?
So the question is, what does unemployment look like across other fields? Okay. Well, I think what we're seeing is that initially, when the claims first came in, if you look at historical perspectives or historical press releases, about 50% of the initial claims were in the food industry, but that is now not even the top industry when it comes to the weekly filing. So it is not restricted to specific industries. There are certainly industries that are impacted harder, but the pandemic has started to impact multiple employers and multiple occupations, so it's certainly not restricted to just a single occupation.
Do you think this decrease in tax or has been closed?
So the question is, do we think that the peak has passed and we'll see ebbs and flows? I think it really depends on, I think the answer is that we do continue to see historic, but certainly not as historic as that 33,000. And as of this week, while we can't release the specific data, we are still trending a little bit lower, still at a historic level, but not at that 33,000 claim level. So yes, it does appear that while many people still continue to be impacted weekly, it is not at the same level that we saw 2 weeks ago. Now, pandemic unemployment assistance is a new program. It has individuals that were self-employed have been impacted by the pandemic for several weeks but haven't been able to apply. So there is a backed up demand for that program. So we will see a significant spike in pandemic unemployment assistance this week and probably next week. So that one certainly hasn't subsided. But as far as traditional, it does appear that we hit the peak, and now we're still trending very high, but lower than the peak.
That concludes the question section of this press release. We did have some audio issues with Facebook, so Kevin is going to reiterate what he said earlier for those on Facebook, but this press conference is over. Thanks.
So just to kind of restate it for Facebook, for those that the audio wasn't in, we just released the weekly data and what we saw is the week ending April 11th, we saw 24,171 new claims. That is 27% down from the previous week where we saw the 33,000 claims. Now, it's important to remember that this is still at a historic level. So while it is down from 2 weeks ago, it is still over 2,000% more claims this last week than we received on an average week in 2019. Now, some of the good news is that we've also been able to process more benefits than we have in compared to 2019 as well, and compared to the week before. This week, we were able to pay out a little over $18 million in unemployment benefits. That is 124% or 163% higher than the amount of benefits paid out the week prior, and it's 530% more benefits going out than the average week of payments in 2019. Now, some of those benefits are the $600 stimulus. We announced last week that that had been deployed, and people who were getting paid would get that $600 stimulus, and we have been able to process those. And that'll just be a part of your tradition or of your unemployment weekly claim moving forward. But in the week of April 5th to April 11th, we were able to pay out $6.4 million in that stimulus benefit and $11.6 million in state trust fund benefits. Now, it is important to know the difference. The state trust fund is funded by employer taxes. Those taxes are deposited into the trust fund and used for individuals who are laid off through no fault of their own and are covered employees. And so that's the $11.6 million. The $6.4 million that came in the $600 a week stimulus is federal dollars, so does not disrupt the solvency of the trust fund, but does provide some economic relief to those that have been affected due to COVID-19, had their employment affected. The other thing that we reviewed was that yesterday we announced that pandemic unemployment assistance application is up. It is part of the CARES Act as well. So as mentioned, individuals who are covered traditionally under unemployment are those that are called covered workers, meaning that an employer has employees and pays taxes on those employees. We collect that tax, we deposit it into the state trust fund, and that trust fund can only be used to pay out benefits to those who have been laid off through no fault of their own and are covered because they are employees. The self-employed do not pay that tax, and so they have not been eligible for unemployment. But the pandemic unemployment assistance is a new temporary federal program that allows individuals that are traditionally ineligible for unemployment to apply for pandemic unemployment assistance. Now, it's also very important to know that you cannot receive both unemployment and pandemic, and you cannot choose which one you want to receive. If you are eligible for state unemployment, you are ineligible for pandemic unemployment assistance. If you have already applied, if you've already applied for unemployment or are receiving unemployment, you do not need to and cannot apply for pandemic unemployment assistance. If you were determined ineligible for unemployment benefits, you can and should apply for pandemic unemployment assistance. If your employment hasn't been interrupted by COVID-19 yet, but now it has and you want to apply and you're not sure which one to apply for, on jobs.utah.gov/COVID-19, there is a link to an Am I Eligible? It's also available on the page where you file your claim. Click that Am I Eligible button. All you do is enter your Social Security number. If it comes back with a dollar amount that you'd be eligible for if you were laid off through no fault of your own, you should apply for unemployment benefits. If it comes back with a $0 amount, then you should apply for pandemic unemployment assistance. All of this information is available on a lot of our questions on the frequently asked questions at jobs.utah.gov/COVID-19. And with that, we'll go ahead and end the broadcast.